Wargo, team pilot for Hobbyking, and today we are going to do a pilot's perspective video on the Super Tucano. The Tucano is one of my favorite scale aircraft. It's pretty darn aerobatic and it just looks great in the air. I think it's, it's a trainer, obviously a Brazilian trainer, but the plane itself just flies so well. I love it at every part of the aerobatic envelope, as well as just the way it looks scale. Of course, it doesn't 3D, it doesn't do any extremely aerobatic things, but for a scale aircraft, it is absolutely awesome. So again, this is the pilot's perspective video. So what I'm going to be doing besides flying it and showing the plane to you is we're going to go over everything that you need to know about this aircraft and everything you need to understand as to what to expect when you make your first flight, when you are flying, when you land it, and what to expect everywhere in between. Then I am also going to go into my personal settings. We're going to go into all the things that an advanced pilot who really wants to absolutely get the most out of this aircraft, that includes mixing and everything else. You'll have all of my settings, everything I did to make this plane fly the way it flies for me. So let's get started. First, we'll talk just a little bit about the aircraft itself. Okay, setting this up, the CG in the manual at 80mm is spot on. I found that, when I was kind of landing it, I thought to myself, I think I'd like to have it just a little tiny bit further back than that, just for how it performed in the landing. But flying it, it flew just wonderfully right, spot on to the CG that they have. So we're going to go up and we're going to show you what to expect from the maiden flight, and I'll go over that with you in a moment. Okay. What you're going to notice about this is a little different, with the, whatchamacallit, the 5-bladed prop. It's be a little quieter than normal, that kind of thing. The acceleration is a little smoother. It's definitely something a little different than the 2-bladed prop. Nothing you should be alarmed about, or it's not really going to change much of anything. Now, what I'm going to recommend on this first flight is that we take off and land on high rates. I preach that all the time because what we're looking for is, if anything out of the ordinary happens, we want to make sure we have as much deflection as possible just in case we need it. But in this case, as I set it up, all the surfaces were dead level. I made no precautions. Nothing is different on setup other than the way it is in the manual. That's how I maidened it, because I know when you get the aircraft, you'll have the manual with you and you should set it up with the manual. Now, my particular settings are going to be a little different, and I'm going to give you those when I'm through with the video. When we are taking off, what I want you to do is leave this plane on the ground as long as possible. Let it try to lift off by itself. Don't yank on the elevator or anything like that. We're just going to try and let the plane lift off by itself and make sure we have enough speed. The only really big mistake we can make on takeoff with this aircraft, besides not steering properly, is to yank on the elevator, maybe not have the plane going fast enough and risk anything stalling. Last but not least, I would recommend that you put a little extra expo on the rudder. That's going to make it a little easier for you to steer. Some of the ones that the nose gear can get a little sensitive, and if you don't set the plane up properly, you may have a little difficulty keeping it square. But for the most part, when you start down the runway, as long as you have a fair amount of expo on the nose gear, on the rudder, it should stay nice and straight for you. I'm also going to recommend at first, for that very first takeoff, you just feed in a little down elevator to keep it on the runway, so it doesn't want to take off prematurely, because you can get yourself in trouble that way. And I've seen it happen 1,000 times, or CG is a little too far back. So let's start it with a little down elevator that puts a little pressure on the nose wheel, especially if you're on grass and you're bouncing. And then we're going to let the plane lift off slowly all by itself. There you go.
Gear down. Gear up.
We're going to lift the gear. Now, as you can see, the plane is a little out of trim. So it's nosing in a little bit and it's turning right. So we're going to add a couple of clips of trim. I think we're going to need some more. All right, and this is exactly, as it's happening to me. All right. Now that we've got that done, the next thing we want to do is make sure that, as we, even if you balanced it on the CG, we're going to check it because each airframe is a little bit different. So I'm going to put it up at a 45 and I'm going to invert it and watch to see what the nose is going to do. I'm over. Okay, the nose is really falling quite hard. So I am going to need to adjust the CG back. So the first thing I'm going to do is land the aircraft and get the CG right so that I can, fly this thing the way it should be flown. And that also explains why I needed a little extra up trim. Maybe when I reseated the battery, the CG was a little further forward than I thought. So we're going to drop the gear.
Take off flaps.
In this case, I'm going to come in with half flaps. Full
Landing
flaps.
flaps.
All right.
Gear up.
All right, now we're going to check the CG. We're going to go up 45. We're going to roll it over. It is slightly nose heavy, or it's flying a little nose heavy, but it could be because of a lot of the up trim that we put in it. So I put a couple clicks of down. Well, a lot of people like to fly warbirds just a tad nose heavy, but I don't. I like to fly them balanced. Okay, we're going to pretend it's balanced, and I'm going to show you how we're going to handle the rest of the flight. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we are going to have to check the flap system to make sure that we have enough down elevator in it to keep it from ballooning, things like that. So we're going to fly it across the runway, and we're going to check our first flaps.
Takeoff flaps.
So there's the takeoff flaps. You can see the plane wanting to rise a little bit, and that's not necessarily a problem. But I do believe I will probably mix that out. So I'm going to add a little down elevator. I'm going to add a little down elevator to the takeoff flaps. And now we're going to slow down again, and we're going to add full flaps.
Landing flaps.
All right. Well, that seems like it has plenty of down elevator. That seems almost perfect.
Flaps off.
So I think we're going to be right on the money with my guess for the down elevator. So now that I have everything kind of dialed in where I like it, on my Maidens, I always like to do a little check of how it's going to perform with things like point rolls and things like that. So and I think it's doing pretty good. 2, 3, 4. Wow, very, very nice. I mean, really nice. That was kind of surprising a little bit. like all the Tucanos, I've had upwards of a 100cc Tucano like this, and they always fly well, and they always have really nice aerobatic tendencies and everything else like that. As usual, I want to see how well it's going to just hit and hold knife edge. And to me, it looks like it's holding it pretty well. So let's see what we can do about trying a knife edge down the runway. And this is only for my purposes to help know what to expect, because if it's a little funky on knife edge, I'm going to start thinking about mixing. Normally, maiden flight isn't the time to do this. All right, it's rolling out a little bit. You can see it rolling out? So I know I have to put some opposite aileron to keep it and hold it. Okay, right now I am figuring I might be running a little low on battery. So we're going to do a nice low pass just so you guys can kind of take a look at the aircraft. As soon as I get it balanced, we can do things like, a nice low inverted pass. There's just requiring a little too much I'll tell you, it's got plenty of power. Nice up lines. All right, we're going to set it up for landing. We already know that our flaps are okay, and they're not going to cause us any problems. So I'm going to start with takeoff flaps. We're going to drop the gear, make sure all three are down, all down and locked. As I always recommend, a nice long approach. This field keeps me from making too long of an approach, but we're going to do a nice long approach on high rates. Now I've got full flaps engaged. I'm going to do what I always recommend, which is I'm going to point the nose at me. Well, that's as pretty as a landing can be. I'll tell you, this really doesn't have any bad tendencies at all. I think it would be very difficult for this model to be, really out of whack when you fly it. I really like this particular CG throughout, but I think it needs to come back a little bit. I think I want it just a little more tail heavy, because you've all watched me fly. I want to do those nice low inverted passes and things like that, and I really need that CG right on the money. Nice long approach. Let's set this in the middle of the runway. Now you can clearly see that through this landing, I did not, and I'm telling you, do not under any circumstances just cut the power and fly it in, and just let it die like that, because as it gets closer to the runway, as soon as the speed gets critical, it's going to go down like this. You need to have some power when you're landing. If you watched as I was coming in, the power was on. I was driving the airplane to the ground, but it slowed perfectly. It's kind of the textbook way to land, but a high wing trainer and things like that, we can just cut the motor and let it land. If I was braver and didn't want to risk losing the aircraft or breaking the nose gear, I would show you what it does. But I'm telling you, if you just cut the power and let it coast to a stop, it's going to fly like this, and then it's going to nose in, and it's going to cause some problems. The flaps are doing a lot to keep it airborne, but you need air. You need air passing over it, and you need a little pull. And as you can see, it landed just perfectly. All right, over the last couple of flights, we've learned a few things. We've learned that my suggestion to leave the thing on the ground because of the CG and stuff like that, it wanted to stay on the ground, didn't want to lift off by itself. So I'm here to tell you that we need just a little up elevator. But on the first flight, I still advise that you leave it on the ground and don't add up elevator, because if your configuration is a little different, it might jump off too soon. So in order to get off the ground, we're going to add a little up elevator. And now I'm also going to take off with the first level of flaps, and that's going to make my takeoff much, much prettier. So let's watch. Watch how nice the takeoff's going to be now. That is just perfect.
Gear up.
All right, we're going to pull the gear up, take the flaps off. I adjusted the down elevator just a little bit for the first level of flaps, but it still ballooned a little bit, but that's not a big deal. I can make some more adjustments, and I'll tell you exactly where they are on when I give you my settings. Okay, it's just flying really, really nice right now. Now I'm testing the right side. And in that direction, without a lot of throttle, it was looking like the nose is falling a little bit, so the rudder might not be strong enough to hold it up. So let's see. Yep, it's climbing on that side. What I need is power. So we're going to come right to left this time. Yeah, you need quite a lot of power on this side to hold that knife edge nice and straight. Now I've got the high voltage batteries in it now. This thing is just cooking. Definitely more power, a lot more power than with the standard voltage, the standard 6-cell. All right. This time we are going to see what it's going to fly like inverted. So I'm going to pull it towards the runway, invert it, bring it down, and just be careful. On the very first time, I'm not going to fly it a foot off the ground, because I know the nose is going to want to come down a little bit. We definitely need to get the CG back a little bit if I'm going to do that, and try and keep it pretty low, because the nose is wanting to kind of roll over. Yeah, this battery is a bit heavier than the one I had in it, so my CG is even more forward than it was before. The other one was a 4500. I'm going to have to do one of two things. I am potentially going to have to modify the foam to be able to bring the CG back with this particular battery, or just stick with a 4000 milliamp, which I'm perfectly happy with. At this point, with the mixing going left to right, I have a little mix in it, and one I started with from my my previous large Tucano, just to maybe not take a chance and have it be too out of whack. But I'm definitely going to have to put some more aileron in to keep it from doing what it's doing there, which is rolling out. But again, it's flying really, really well. Now this is the part that I think is important and fun, and that is, how do we want to fly it? It is a warbird. This plane looks fantastic, with those nice low passes and low high bank turns. It looks absolutely fantastic. Just turning and burning, crank and bank. But one of my favorite things to do with a warbird is to do a nice, dirty, low pass. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put the flaps all the way down.
Landing flaps.
Obviously at a little higher speed, it's going to balloon a little bit. So let's see how nice and slow we can fly it. Look how nice that is. This has no gyro, no flight stabilization.
Take flaps off.
It flies wonderfully well. It's got a nice big wing, so it does do a good job at floating. So far, the only thing that I didn't like so much was the inverted pass, because the nose heavy configuration was pulling the nose to the ground. And nobody really wants to watch the thing dive into the ground when it's inverted. So we're going to have to do that with a lighter battery, or find a way to get the CG back a little bit. Got a bit more aft CG. Again, I'm going to take off with takeoff flaps. And this liftoff should be really beautiful, just nice and straight, because I have the CG back just a little bit. Man, that was just perfect. You see it lift off all by itself. So this time we're going to roll it over and fly it inverted again. Let's see how much it likes it this time. Definitely a lot more control. All right, we're going to try the knife edge thing again to see if I dialed it in perfectly. Yep, it's staying on that side. Let's see on this side. Definitely staying. I think we're in good shape. In my opinion, all the controls right now are just about perfect. My Expo, I've been flying it on high rates the whole time, and it's just really behaving. That came out very nice. It clearly tumbled very nicely, so this is definitely a maneuver that you can do pretty easily. I'm going to try and get it into a flat spin. See how it handles that. I'm going real high just to make sure I can get it out of it once it's in. An inverted flat spin. Didn't like that too much. So my best guess is we're not going to be able to get it into an inverted flat spin. It just doesn't have enough elevator to, you know, to make it happen. Yeah, she just does not want to make that happen. Actually, I'm going to try a stall turn. Here's another maneuver that looks really nice with a warbird. Just a stall turn. In this case, I'm going to go straight up the middle. Kick the rudder in early because it doesn't have a lot. And straight down. Some of my favorite stuff to do with this particular plane is the stuff where you pull off the line really hard in a hard bank. So you have a nice low pass and then you just turn off real quick and make a nice low tight circle. Aerobatically speaking, like I said, this plane is really nice. So if we want to do some basic aerobatic maneuvers like Cuban 8s and things like that, the plane handles it all really, really nicely. and maintains very straight lines. Now some of the warbirds are not going to want to hold the lines very well, but like I said, this one does. Aggressive takeoff, that's one way to do it.
Gear up.
Of course, do a nice 4-point roll. Nice big half Cuban. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and just finish it. Beautifully straight lines. Make sure you don't go in too much of an angle. There we go. Now let's get some airspeed, go up, and we're going to do what would be the maneuver for a Lampschwach and make it tumble a little bit. It carries a pretty fair amount of momentum. Go to the top. Here's another maneuver. This is going to be a stall turn. Doesn't that look nice? Nice straight line down. We're going to do a straight line up. 3/4 till we get to the top. Another stall turn. Now with warbirds, because we don't have that much elevator authority or a rudder authority, you have to start the turn before you get to the top. Now I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Now watch. I'm going to go straight up, level it off, and I'm going to start now. And now blip the throttle a little bit, and that stall turn actually looks really, really good. The tumbling is just basically we're going to throw all the sticks to the corners. Full throttle, all the sticks to the corner, and it'll start wrapping up. You see it? I think that looks terrific. Most warbirds, especially if they might be a tad bit nose heavy, if you add enough elevator especially, they'll tumble. And they're fairly easy to get out of the tumble. Now I did try something of a blender and stuff like that. It wasn't quite as successful. Didn't look so. Now as always in an aerobatic flight, a nice, like a nice low inverted flight, a pass and stuff like that always looks terrific. And this is holding it beautifully, right? But the servos and stuff like that and the throws. But for the most part, it's holding it pretty good right now. But a way to make this look good with any warbird is to kind of roll the wings a little bit to help with the buoyancy. And just keep it in 3/4 of a knife edge. And then you could dip it down close to the ground like this. So it kind of has the appearance of a knife edge circle without actually being full on knife edge. And of course, if you're in the middle, you can always do a quick snap back out. This is definitely a maneuver I like for warbirds. Sometimes it takes a little bit of courage, but most of the time it's not so bad. You know, just perpetual rolling. Now I added rudder on every one of those like a Harrier roll. But you don't necessarily have to. Pretty sure it's going to roll pretty good without it. And for this maneuver for sure, we want to use the rudder. Another maneuver that is really nice to do is a long, slow roll. Warbirds generally don't like them. It's pretty difficult, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot here. Had to hurry it up a little bit. Let's try it again, see if I can do it a little cleaner. That one wasn't too bad. A couple things that, again, that are important is that, you know, as you're landing this aircraft, it's not a problem to land it slow. It lands beautifully. You simply need to make sure you're on a little bit of throttle to make sure it settles in the way you want. The only tendency now I see for an advanced pilot is when I'm flying it inverted, it is definitely, even when I brought the CG back, you know, the nose wanted to porpoise a little bit. You know, having to hold a lot of elevator, obviously I can keep it, but it was, you know, it was a little more dicey than I would really like it to be. I'd like it to be able to just sit and hold. So it required a little extra attention. Make sure if you're going to try it, you do it a few times until you settle in exactly the way you want it. I also flew it on as little as 3,300 milliamps, a little less flight time. But if you are going to try and do really cool stuff with it, the knife edge stuff and all the low inverted stuff or anything like that, flying it light isn't a bad idea. You're just going to lose a little flight time. The manual says 4,000 to 6,200. If I were you, I would not fly it on the heavy end of the spectrum. I don't see any real benefit to it. The plane is not going to fly like it did for me. I can guarantee you at 6,500. 4,000 I think is the sweet spot. From now on, when I fly it, I'm going to fly it at 4,000. And maybe if I'm doing a show or anything like that and I want it to look especially good on knife edge or some of the other stuff, I will fly it on 3,300. My mixes are unique to my airframe. I think they're a good starting point, but you're going to need to kind of mix it out yourself to make sure it flies perfectly. If you're putting a different battery in it, the mix will change a little bit. So make sure you get your CG right where you want it, everything like that. Ultimately, they have the CG at 80 centimeters, and I really believe I like flying this a lot better at about 84. So that is my opinions. Those are my settings. All of my dual rates at Expo, I'm going to do right now and show you exactly how I set it up. Okay, the only critical mix I have found in this plane, of course, is the rudder elevator aileron mix. So here's where I have it set. This is the rudder elevator. I have 9.5 on one side and 1.5 on the other. And on the rudder aileron, I have minus 5.5 and minus 8.5%. And that will keep the thing straight and on knife edge. The one thing for sure, though, is while you're setting this mix, make sure you get the CG right, because the CG will affect the rudder elevator especially. So if your CG is forward, the settings I gave you will not work. If the CG is aftward, again, it won't work. You have to balance the aircraft first. Okay, here is where I have my flaps. I think they're about perfect. As you can see, the reading's all the way down. There's enough down elevator to keep the plane flying nice and level right through your landing.
Flight mode 2.
This is my snap rates, and then bottom
Flight mode 1.
low rates. Here is rudder,
Flight mode 2.
mid rates,
Flight mode 1.
and low rates. Elevator, high rates,
Flight mode 2.
mid rate,
Flight mode 1.
and low rates. As you can see here, these blocks keep the battery from sliding backwards. If you want to put a heavier battery in it, undoubtedly, if you want it to fly anything like mine flew, you might have to cut out a little of this foam to make sure you can drop it back a little bit. There's other ways to, you know, get the CG a bit more aft, but I don't like adding weight to it. So if it's up to me, I'd rather carve a little out, shove the battery back, put the battery closer to the center of gravity, to the spar, and ultimately it will fly better anyway. I'm really trying to max out the flight controls, the amount of rudder, and the amount of elevator, ailerons. I like to have a high rate that, you know, will give enough elevator, enough rudder to max it out so that I know that I can pull off any of the maneuvers that I want to. You can always tone them down with your other rates, but I did exceed the manual specs for up and down and right and left on everything. But going with the manual you'll never go wrong.
Take flaps off.
In closing, I have to tell you, as far as, you know, warbirds and things like this goes, this is absolutely awesome. It's always been my favorite plane shape, and, you know, I love the model from an aesthetic standpoint. But this thing flies wonderfully. It handles wonderfully. It'll be one of the few warbirds that I take out regularly and fly just for me and just for fun. So if you're considering it, this is an awesome aircraft.